Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. All right, so let's go ahead and do our pattern today. Let me get my marker. All right, can you guess what we're counting by? They only gave us the last three numbers, so we've got to figure out what the first three were. Can you guess what we're counting by here? What number pattern is that? It's the hundreds. All right, so we have 500, 600, 700. So it's actually getting bigger. We're counting forward, but because the ones before it are missing, we have to count backwards to figure out what these three are. All right, so let's try to figure out. Ooh, I'm stuck. All right, so let's try to figure out what comes before 500. So if we have 700, 600, 500, think of what if you're counting backwards. 7, 6, 5, 4. So it's going to be 400. All right, what comes before 400? 300. And then what comes before 300? 200. That's right. All right, so let's count all the way from the first one to the end and see if it sounds right if we're counting by hundreds. 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. All right, good job. All right, so I have coins today for my coin cup. And these are a little different. Kind of what we used yesterday, but this time I got more big ones so you can see it on camera better. All right, so who can guess what these are? What are all these coins? They're the same thing. There's George Washington. This is our biggest coin that we usually have in our pockets or in our purses. It's a quarter. What is a quarter worth? Do you remember our song? A penny's worth 1, a nickel's worth 5, a dime is worth 10, and a quarter 25. All right, so we have to count by 25s today, and we have 4 of them. So if you can remember our counting pattern for 25s, then we can do the whole thing here. Okay, so remember it starts with 25. Do you remember the next one? 25, 50, 75, $1. So if you have 4 quarters, that equals $1. So let's count them again. Ready? 25, whoops, let's see how to do this. All right, 25, 50, 75, $1. Very good. So I'm going to write that up here on the board. And to write $1, remember we use our dollar sign, which is an S with a line through it, and then a 1, and then a decimal, which is a dot, and then 0, 0. So it looks like 100, just like if we had 100 pennies, that equals $1. But because we have this decimal and dollar sign, it becomes $1. Okay? All right, so let's count by tens. We're going to get our 100 number chart. And we can count by tens either starting with 10 and going to 100, or we can count by tens starting with any of these numbers at the top. All right, so since today is the 5th, let's go ahead and count by tens starting with 5. Okay, let's do it together. You ready? Go. 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95. All right, good job. I'm going to pick a number on here, and then I want you to tell me what 10 more would be, okay? Let's see, how about this number? All right, so 38. What's 10 more than 38? 48. Very good. All right, so what's 10 less than 38? 28. Good job. So if we subtracted 10, we would get 28. If we added 10, we get 48. All right, so let me pick another number. How about here? All right, 74. What's 10 more than 74? 84. Good job. All right, what is 10 less? Or if we subtracted 10 from 74, what would it be? 64. Good job. All right, so now we're ready for our lesson. As you can see by my drawing, we're going to be doing temperature today. All right, I got that erased. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about temperature, and we're going to talk about what this instrument is that people use to tell what the temperature is, because there's a name for it. And then we're going to use 4 words to describe different kinds of temperature, and I'm going to write those on the board. Okay, so we have, whoops, I stepped on my cord. All right, so we have cold, we have cool, we have warm, and we have hot. Okay? So these 4 words describe what the temperature feels like. It could feel cold, it could feel warm, it could feel cool, or it could feel hot, depending on what the temperature is. All right, so why don't you think of some things that would be hot? What kind of things do you think of when you think of something hot? What about fire? I definitely think that's hot. All right, can you think of anything? What about, so tonight we had soup, and it was hot. I burned the tip of my tongue, so that can be hot too if it's coming off the stove. What about hot chocolate? Sometimes that can be really hot. You have to blow on it to cool it down. All right, so what do you wear when you have a really hot day? What would you be wearing? Well, let's see, if we were at school, you'd probably have shorts on, and you'd have a short sleeve shirt. Definitely would not need a jacket for a hot day. What about warm? What kinds of things do you think you'd wear if it was warm? You could possibly wear pants and maybe a short sleeve shirt. Probably not a jacket, because it'd still be kind of warm. All right, so what about a cold day? What kinds of things would you wear if it was a cold day? Probably a coat, maybe gloves or a hat for your head. If it was really cold, maybe a scarf that could go over your face to keep it warm. All right, what about a cool day? So not cold, but it's cool. It's not quite warm. What would you wear for a cool day? Probably a jacket, maybe, if it was a little chilly out, kind of cool. Probably pants. If you didn't have a jacket, maybe you'd wear a long sleeve shirt. Yeah, for a cool day. All right, let's think of some things that are cold. So we know the temperature can be cold, but what other things can you think of that are cold? What about snow? Is snow cold? It is, because it's frozen water, right? What about ice cream? Ice cream's cold because you have to keep it in your freezer. And ice cubes too, those have to be kept in the freezer, and they're really cold. All right, so this instrument I was telling you about, there's different forms of it. The one we're going to talk about is usually in a glass tube, and it has this red liquid inside. And what happens is this red liquid goes up and down depending on if it's cold or it's hot. So we call this instrument a thermometer. There's different kinds, like when you're sick, sometimes they have those ones you can put on your forehead and it'll give you a digital number. That's called a thermometer too. It just looks different, but it's the same idea. It's going to take your temperature. So we're going to talk about this one that has glass with this red liquid inside. It's called mercury. And mercury expands and contracts, that means gets smaller, depending on if it's cold or hot. So as you can guess, see how these numbers go up into bigger numbers? You can guess that when it gets hotter, the mercury expands and it goes up. When it's colder, it contracts and it goes down the tube. All right, so we're going to use our worksheet today to learn about temperature and thermometers. So if you have this at home, go ahead and get it out now. If not, you can just follow along with me. Okay, so we're going to start on this side. The other side has 2 thermometers. We're going to start out with the one that has just the 1 thermometer. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here with some magnets. Oh yeah, before we get started, I'm going to give you two temperatures, okay? And then I'm going to color in on my thermometer those two temperatures. All right, the first temperature we're going to do is a cup of water that I got out of my refrigerator. So the water that comes out of our refrigerator is as cold as our refrigerator. So this is going to be colder water than what I would get out of the sink. Okay, so this water was actually, when I took it out, was 39 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to color in the red, and I'm just going to round it to 40 degrees because we're counting by tens on our thermometer. See, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130. So I'm going to say 39 is close to 40. So that's what I'm going to do my mercury, the red line, to. So what I'm going to do is find 40, which is right here. And I'm going to draw a line. Because what happens is you start coloring it, and then if you color too far, you go, oh, whoops, I went past the 40, and it's really hard to erase it if you're using crayon. So go ahead and make a little mark where you want to color to. So I'm going to color to 40, and then I'm going to draw my mercury all the way up to 40. And that's how cold the water was that I got. So I'm going to put that over here, 40 degrees. Okay? Now the next temperature I'm going to tell you about is the inside air inside my house. Well, today it was hot, so we had to turn on our air conditioning. I was trying not to because we like to wait as long as possible before we start running our air conditioning. But today was hot and we were all getting really sweaty and uncomfortable, so I turned it on. So my thermostat for the air conditioning is set at 77 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to find, here's 70. So 77 would be a little bit higher, not quite to 80, but close. So I'm going to draw a little line and guess. Probably about right there is 77. Okay, I'm going to erase my 40 degrees, and I'm going to extend this line up to there. So as you can see, my water was kind of chilly because it came out of my refrigerator. But the inside of our house is definitely warmer than the refrigerator water, right? Otherwise, I'd be in a sweater, and it'd be really cold if the inside of our house was in the 30s. All right, so the inside temperature in my house is 77 degrees. All right, so we're going to need these two numbers here in a minute. Oh, and I was going to tell you too, this little circle we put next to the number is a little symbol that means degrees. Okay, so just like if we were to say 20 inches, we have to put inches for our label. This little bubble means degrees, and so we know automatically they're talking about temperature. Okay, so whenever we are talking about our thermometers or temperature, don't forget the little degree circle. And these thermometers, there's two different ways to measure temperature. There's Fahrenheit and there's Celsius. So we use, in the United States, the Fahrenheit scale usually. So that's why there's an F on your sheet next to the little circle degrees. F means Fahrenheit. That way you know which scale you're using, because Celsius is completely different than the Fahrenheit scale. So I'll give you an example. On the Fahrenheit scale, which is what we're using, water freezes at 32 degrees. Okay, so that's pretty cold. If it's outside weather is 32 or lower and it's supposed to rain, we know we're going to get snow then, because that rain's going to turn into snow. So that's why you look at the temperature and say, ooh, is it going to be below 32? Because that means it's going to freeze. So 32 is freezing when water freezes on the Fahrenheit scale. On the Celsius scale, water freezes at 0. So you can see how different that is. That's why you need to know, is it the F for Fahrenheit or it's a C for Celsius? All right, so that was a lot of information, but we don't need to know all that right now. Just know that this is the degree symbol, and that's what that F means next to your degree symbol. All right, so let's go ahead and fill out the front of this, because now we have all the information we need to fill in all the blanks. We have these and we have these words, and we're going to put them all in there. All right, so let me get, hopefully you can see this. Maybe I should do a marker. I don't know, we'll see if this works. All right, so at the top, we have to figure out if 100 degrees is cold, cool, warm, or hot. So what did we say? When the number gets bigger, does that mean it's getting warmer or colder? It's getting warmer as the number gets bigger. So if it's 100 degrees outside, that is hot. Guess what you'd be doing if it was 100 degrees outside? You would be swimming because you would want to stay cool. All right, so at the top, we're going to put hot in the blank because that means it's a hot day if we have 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, I guess you can't see that very well, but I wrote hot right up here at the top line. All right, now let's fill in this box right here. It says the temperature of our classroom, or my house, since we're not in the classroom, is what? Do you remember which one was the temperature that was inside my house? That's right, 77. So we're going to write that in right here. They already put the little degree circle and the F for Fahrenheit. So all you have to write is 77. All right, so our next line here is pointing to the 80 degrees. Now, that's still pretty warm. That's kind of what today's temperature was, is 84. That was pretty warm. Not really enough to go swimming yet, because the water felt a little cold still, but it's not cool. What would you put for the next one? Warm. So 80 degrees is pretty warm. That would be a warm day. So I'm going to cross out the ones we've used so far. All right, now let's go to the bottom one, because this will be easy to figure out. It's pointing to 30 degrees. Do you think 30 degrees is going to be cold, or is it just going to be kind of cool? It's going to be cold, because that's when water freezes. If you think of where water freezes, like your ice cubes in your freezer, that's pretty cold, isn't it? So I'm going to put that would be a cold day. That's cold enough to snow. So that's definitely cold. All right, so that leaves us with one more temperature word, which is cool. So 60 degrees Fahrenheit is not super warm. It's kind of one of those days where if it was a little windy, you might need a jacket. So 60 degrees would be a cool day. Okay? And I'll take this up and hold it up to the camera a little closer, because I know it's hard to see. It's kind of far away. All right, the last box here at the bottom where it says temperature of water from our, it says drinking fountain. I don't have a drinking fountain in my house, but I had a water spout coming out of my refrigerator. So that'll be my drinking fountain. All right, so how cold was the water from my refrigerator? 40 degrees. So we're going to fill that in. All right, let me show you. I'll bring it a little closer. All right, so make sure your sheet looks like this if you have one in front of you. Oops, sorry. All right, so I'm trying to figure out moves up and down. Okay. We're going to go ahead and color in this thermometer for the hot day. Okay, so go ahead and get out a red crayon. I'm going to use my red marker. And what you want to do, they made a nice little tube here that you can color in. So what you want to do for 100 degrees, we're going to make a little mark at the 100 so I know where to color up to so I don't go too far. And then with your crayon, your red crayon, you're going to color in this with red. All right. me show you. Oops, that kind of went through on the other side of my paper. So all the way up to 100, all the way down. Okay, so when we're reading a thermometer, what we do is we go to where the top of the red is, and then we look at what number it's right next to, and then we'll know that's what the temperature is. Okay? All right, so let's flip it over to the back side. My marker went through, but you should have 2 thermometers here. All right, so this one you'll still need your red crayon and a pencil or some kind of writing utensil. All right, let's look at this first thermometer. They already have, even though it's not red, this is to represent the mercury in your thermometer. So go ahead and follow it up to where it stops. And what number is that right next to? 30 degrees. So at the top, where that blank is, that line, write 30. And they already have the degree circle and the F for Fahrenheit. All right, so we know this thermometer here is saying it's 30 degrees. So at the bottom it says, what type of day is it? Is it cold, warm, cool, or hot? So remember, if it's 30 degrees, it's either cold or cool. All right, it's definitely not warm. So which one would it be? Would you think it would be cold, or do you think it would be cool? If you remember, water freezes at 32 degrees. So 30 degrees, that would be kind of cold. So go ahead and circle cold at the bottom of your paper. Let me scoot this up so you can see it. So you see how I circled cold at the bottom, and then at the top I wrote in 30 degrees. Okay? All right, let's do our second thermometer. All right, so it told us now how many degrees. It's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's go ahead and color in our thermometer. So this is when you're going to get your red crayon, or if you have a red colored pencil. And what are we going to do first? We're just going to start coloring it? Okay, we got to find the 100 degrees on the side over here on our thermometer. So there it is right there. And I'm going to draw just a little line so I know where to stop when I'm coloring. And then I can color in the middle, I didn't draw it very straight. The middle column there to show 100 degrees. So here, I'll show it to you a little closer. See, mine's kind of wiggly. So try to color as best as you can, but go all the way to 100. So it's matching what it's saying up here, 100 degrees, and then color everything below that. All right, so now we have to figure out what type of day is this. Is it cold, cool, warm, or hot? What do you think? If it's 100 degrees outside, that is definitely going to be hot. That is swimming weather. Might even be too hot to go swimming. Might need to stay indoors where it's cool. All right, so go ahead and circle hot here at the bottom. Okay, so now you know how to read a thermometer. So if your house has one, sometimes people have them outside. If you don't, like I don't have one at my house. I couldn't find one. I just have little digital ones. I don't have any of these. But sometimes people have them outside so you can see what the temperature is outside. So you can, if you have one of these, go ahead and check it every day and see if you can read what the temperature is. Okay? All right, so your worksheets today, you have a math fact sheet of subtraction. And then you have your practice work here. So here's the thermometer. And it says over here, number 4, to color